sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
Right, let's dive into this Vikings-Rams wildcard game. I mean, just looking at these articles, there's a lot to unpack, especially with the whole wildfire situation in LA forcing the game to be moved to Arizona.
Yeah, that relocation definitely throws a wrench in things. It makes you wonder about the whole home field advantage thing for the Rams.
We'll definitely get into that, but first, can we just talk about how dominant the Rams were in this game?
Oh, absolutely. It was impressive to watch. Offense was clicking, defense was a wall.
Yeah, reading about how the Rams just scored right out the gate on that opening drive, that must have set the tone for the rest of the game. And then their defense sacked Darnold 9 times.
9 times.
9. I can't even imagine how demoralizing that must be for a quarterback.
He's got to mess with your head for sure. And, you know, it wasn't just a case of the Vikings offensive line completely falling apart. The Rams defensive coordinator, he was really creative with those blitz packages, sending pressure from all angles. It completely disrupted anything the Vikings were trying to do on offense.
So it was more than Darnold just having a bad day. The Rams defense was just playing on another level.
Exactly. You could see the frustration building on the Vikings sideline as the game went on.
One article I was reading even called it a feeding frenzy, which I thought was a pretty accurate description.
Yeah, they were relentless.
Now, I'm really curious about how this relocation to Arizona actually affected the Rams. On the surface, you'd think losing that true home field advantage would hurt them, but maybe it actually played to their advantage.
It's a good question. The Vikings also had to travel just as far. They were dealing with the same unfamiliar environment.
Right.
So it probably evened the playing field a bit.
Maybe even tipped it in the Rams' favor. It becomes as much a mental game as a physical one. The Rams seem to just roll with it and stay focused.
They did, and you can't discount the experience factor here. The Rams have a veteran head coach who's been in these pressure situations before.
That's a good point.
He's known for keeping his cool, keeping the team on track even when things get chaotic.
So that veteran leadership might have been key in navigating that relocation challenge.
Absolutely. They didn't let the change of scenery rattle them.
Okay, so no question the Rams were the better team. But can we circle back to Sam Darnold for a minute?
Sure.
I'm sure the articles are going to be dissecting his performance. Some might even say this game raises questions about his future with the Vikings.
Yeah, the scrutiny is understandable. 9 sacks is a tough look for any quarterback. And while the Rams defense deserves a ton of credit, there were definitely moments where Darnold held the ball too long or just made some questionable decisions under pressure.
Is that a sign of him cracking under the pressure of a big game? Or just some unfortunate mistakes that any quarterback could make?
It's hard to say for sure based on just one game. Darnold has had some great games in the past, but he's also been inconsistent. So, yeah, this game probably raises some concerns.
So, some tough questions for the Vikings moving forward. Speaking of tough, the Rams now have to face the Eagles in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's a whole other beast. The Eagles are playing at such a high level right now. Their offense is explosive, and their defense is nothing to sneeze at either.
What do you think the Rams need to focus on to pull off an upset in Philly? I mean, they handled the Arizona situation well, but this is a whole new level of challenge.
It is. The Eagles are a tough matchup, especially on their home turf.
Yeah, that crowd can be brutal.
For sure. The Rams' defense will need to figure out how to contain that quarterback. They can't let him scramble around and make plays outside the pocket.
So, a real strategic battle ahead.
It's going to be a chess match for sure.
Okay, so we've got the Rams win, Darnold struggles, and the challenge they face against the Eagles. But before we get to some of the bigger ideas in your articles, there's one more thing I want to touch on about this game. This game really got me thinking about the running back position. One article I was reading argued that this game was like a microcosm of a bigger trend in the NFL. Like, running backs are becoming less and less important.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You used to have these workhorse running backs. They'd carry the ball 20, 30 times a game. They were the heart of the offense.
Right, like a battering ram.
Exactly.
But now it seems like the passing game has taken over.
The NFL is all about those explosive plays now. And quarterbacks who can sling it all over the field?
And in this game, the Rams' running game was decent, but it wasn't their main weapon.
Right. They relied on Stafford's arm to move the chains.
So does this mean the running back position is just dying out?
It's a good question. Some people think running backs are becoming more replaceable, especially with how deep the draft is at that position.
Right, like you can find a solid running back in the later rounds.
Or even as an undrafted free agent.
And if you have a great passing attack.
You don't need a superstar running back. You just need someone who can be effective. Pick up a few yards here and there. Keep the defense honest.
So it's more about having a committee of backs who can contribute in different ways, and that seems to be working for a lot of teams. This actually reminds me of something I read about Cooper Kupp. He had a pretty quiet game by his standards.
Yeah, he wasn't as dominant as we're used to seeing.
I wonder why that was.
Well, the Vikings might have schemed specifically to shut him down.
Double coverage, maybe?
It's possible, but I also think Stafford made a conscious effort to spread the ball around.
Keep the Vikings defense guessing.
Exactly. It's all about adjustments in a game like this.
So even though Kupp didn't have a huge game,
Yeah, he was still a factor.
right, he still made some key catches to keep drives alive.
He's just a smart player,
Yeah.
knows how to make an impact even when he's not the focal point.
Okay, so we've talked about the running back situation, the Rams' passing attack,
Yeah.
and Kupp's relatively quiet game. But there's one more element I want to explore. The coaching matchup.
Ah, yes, the battle of the minds on the sideline.
Exactly. Because we know the Rams head coach is a seasoned veteran. But the Vikings coach is relatively new. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how that played out.
Well, the Rams coach, he's known for his offensive creativity.
Right.
He always seems to find ways to exploit weaknesses in the opposing defense.
And he definitely did that in this game.
The Rams' offensive game plan was perfectly tailored to attack the Vikings' vulnerabilities.
And they executed it to perfection.
It really seemed like he was out-coaching the Vikings coach, not just with the initial game plan, but also with the in-game adjustments.
Like he was always one step ahead.
It's hard to say for sure if that experience gap was the deciding factor,
Right.
but it definitely played a role.
Because experience matters in these high-pressure playoff games.
Mhm.
And the Rams coach just seemed so calm and collected throughout the game,
He did, and that kind of confidence can rub off on the players.
while the Vikings coach is still learning the ropes.
He is, and this game was a valuable learning experience for him.
Win or lose, you learn something from every game, especially in the playoffs. Speaking of learning experiences, this game had some interesting implications for the league as a whole. One article I read talked about how this game was like a snapshot of where the NFL is heading, the rise of the passing game, the decline of the traditional running back, the importance of coaching and strategy.
Yeah, it's like we're seeing a shift in the balance of power, and this game was a perfect example of that.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, there's one more thing I want to touch on. Thinking about this Rams win, it feels like there are some bigger takeaways here, beyond just the X's and O's.
Yeah, like what does this game tell us about the NFL as a whole?
Exactly.
Well, to me, it really shows how important it is to be able to adapt in today's NFL. Think about it. The Rams had to completely change gears when the game was moved to Arizona.
Right.
Travel plans, practice routines, their whole mindset. And they didn't miss a beat.
It's pretty impressive how they handled that whole situation.
It really speaks to their mental toughness.
But it's not just off the field either.
Right. They had to adapt on the field, too. The Vikings came in with a specific game plan, but the Rams were able to counter it and impose their own style of play.
It was like they were always one step ahead.
Exactly. And that's what separates the good teams from the great teams.
The ability to adapt on the fly,
To overcome unexpected challenges.
like a survival skill in the NFL.
It is. And this game also highlighted something else, the importance of a strong defense.
Oh yeah, you can't argue with 9 sacks.
And it wasn't just the sacks. They were shutting down the run, forcing turnovers, just relentless pressure on Darnold the entire game.
It was a defensive clinic.
They say offense wins games, but defense wins championships.
And this Rams defense has been a bit up and down this season.
They have. So this game was a statement.
Yeah, like they're reminding everyone what they're capable of.
Exactly. And that's a good sign heading into their matchup with the Eagles.
Speaking of the Eagles, for our listener who's been following along, what's one key thing they should be watching for in that game?
I would say keep an eye on the battle between the Rams defensive line and the Eagles offensive line. That's going to be a crucial matchup, especially with how mobile the Eagles quarterback is.
Right, if he has time to scramble around, he can be a real game changer.
Exactly. So the Rams defensive line needs to be disruptive, get pressure on him, force him to make quick decisions.
That's going to be a fun one to watch.
It is. It could very well decide the game.
Well, this has been another fantastic deep dive. Any final thoughts for our listener before we let them go?
Just remember that momentum is a powerful thing in football. The Rams have it right now after this big win.
Right.
But momentum can shift quickly, especially in the playoffs.
So the Rams can't afford to let up.
Not for a second.
And the Eagles need to find a way to disrupt that momentum early on.
It's going to be a battle of wills out there.
Absolutely. High stakes, high emotions.
That's what makes playoff football so exciting.
Well, thanks for breaking it all down for us.
It's been my pleasure.
I know our listeners walking away with a lot to think about and a lot to look forward to in this Eagles-Rams game.
Enjoy the game.
We'll be back next week with another deep dive.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what